Right, good morning, everybody. Welcome again to a live edition of Elevenses. A little bit late this morning, sorry about that. It's minor domestic crisis. The other half put her phone in the washing machine this morning, so we were just trying to figure out where that was, and we've just found it. Okay, on with the show today. What have we got for you? Today's top story. A major new closed road event is being proposed for the Isle of Wight along the lines of the TT races. Electric scooters, a sharing scheme has gone on hold in New York after 2 rider fatalities. Kawasaki's electric bike, more from the rumour mill on that one. The New Zealand Defence Force is testing electric off-roaders, and we will hopefully fit in time to have a quick look at why ignoring dead ground as you ride is a bad idea. Right, all that's coming soon. Let's just start with the major closed road event. I'm just going to, I've put a link up already to a video clip which you can look at, which will tell you a little bit more about this event. The idea is that this is going to be a closed road time trial event along the lines of the Isle of Man TT, and it will be happening on the Isle of Wight. It'll be a major event, and the idea is that it will bring a significant boost to the local economy as well as being a spectator event. The event's called the Diamond Races, Isle of Wight, and what they're saying is that riders will battle it out at speeds up to 210 miles an hour on the circuit, and that'll take place on the southwest coast along what's known as the Military Road, and pass inland then through some smaller villages. It'll be technical, winding and fast all at the same time, and around about a 5 mile long. It'll be the first time a professional road race has taken place on the Isle of Wight. Public roads, it says, will be closed to facilitate practice days and the race itself, something made possible by recent changes to the law. Practice runs will be on Wednesday and the Thursday before the races. And the roads will be opened up for short periods between those times at selected points. Friday is a rest day, but will also be held in hand as an alternative race day. And the racing proper will go ahead on a Saturday between 9:30 in the morning when the roads will close and 5:30 in the evening, 17:30 when they will close again. Unlike the TT, access to the circuit appears to be via a ticket, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, moving on to my second story. The electric scooter sharing service Revel are suspending operations in New York. Now, let me see if I can get picture up. Hang on a minute. I've managed to lose the screen share, which I had set up. They are looking to what's happened? Well, I stopped fiddling around with the computer. What's happened is that they rent out electric scooters. These things are the proper sort of ride-on scooters, you know, the motorcycle scooters, not the sort of two-wheel kiddie style scooter that have been on hire in other places. And what's happened is that they've had two fatal crashes. 2 weeks ago, a 26-year-old CBS News reporter called Nina Kapoor, she died after the rider of the bike lost control and she came off the passenger seat. It seems that neither her nor the rider were wearing helmets on this bike. And last week, a 32-year-old, Jeremy Malavi, he lost control of his scooter and hit a light post in the central median reservation. and he suffered a severe head trauma, which proved to be fatal. And it seems that no other vehicles were involved in that accident, but it's not clear that he was wearing a helmet. And so following this second fatality, Revel have issued a statement saying that the company is temporarily suspending operations in New York City. They also operate out of Texas, Florida, California, and Washington, D.C., and there's no news as to what they're doing in those places. But basically, the upshot of this is that it's caused a lot of questioning about whether or not these schemes are actually a great idea. You'll know that I've been talking about this over the last few months, if you've been watching the show. The problem is that although they obviously provide mobility, which is useful, these scooters, which, as I explained, are proper ride-on scooters, only have to be ridden with a motorcycle license. So you do not need, a car license. You do not need a motorcycle license to ride these things. And the upshot of this is that people are saying that the riders are really not prepared to ride them properly. Right, okay, there's I managed to get the picture up, so you should be able to see them. So that's what basically what they look like, and you can see that they are the sort of powered two-wheeler scooters of the kind that we're more familiar with on our roads. So you don't need a motorcycle license. You're also required to wear a helmet to hire one, which is there's a pair of them kept in the storage box, which is on the back of each scooter. How do you get hold of one? Well, you sign up via an app, and the app offers access to safety videos on how to operate them. And Revel also operate free safety classes, although people who want to attend them have said that they are filled up, and there are long waiting lists to get on them. So presumably what's happening is people with no motorcycling experience at all are jumping on these things and riding off on them. And the helmet issue is a fairly obvious one. Who would want to wear a shared helmet right at this moment? They have a top speed of around 30 miles an hour. They use the roadway like any other vehicle. So the problem is that people are riding these things out in traffic, and without really any experience of how to use a motorcycle on the road. So there are questions being asked about the appropriateness of these schemes. Right, okay, still to come, I'll be looking in a little bit more detail at the Isle of Wight, I should say, road race along the style of the Isle of Man. I'll be looking at a TT, how that will work over there. The New Zealand military might be going electric. I'll show you some pictures of what they'll be doing. We've got a story on a missing pensioner. This is a new one that I found, who went missing after a trail biking trip went wrong. We'll talk about him, and if we've got time, I might not have time actually, I'll be talking about blind spots. Right, okay, but first of all, Kawasaki. I've had several stories over the past months about Kawasaki actually going electric with a 400cc motorcycle where the petrol engine is replaced with electric motorcycle engine. And there's enough work going on this to make one seriously wonder whether or not it's actually going to go into production, with the balance being that it probably will. Everybody is going to have to get involved in electric motorcycles. It's no longer going to be the province of oddball startups. It's going to have to be mainstream motorcycle companies going live with these bikes. So Kawasaki seem to be pretty well placed to do it. The bike we saw in photos earlier was a 400 Ninja with an electric motorcycle engine, but the latest news is that the production of these things is likely to happen over a number of different locations. This is part of a patent which has appeared, and it would seem that the battery and the electric motor and the control unit for this motorcycle would be produced in a different site from the motorcycle itself. Now, if Kawasaki are planning on wedging the electric powertrain into one of their existing motorcycles, more or less, then this makes an awful lot of sense, because they can go ahead with producing the frame and the bodywork and wheels and all that kind of thing at one site, and literally just have the power unit bolted in to the chassis. Remember that this Kawasaki also runs a motorcycle style gearbox as well, 6-speed gearbox. So it's there's a third location mentioned, which is where these items would presumably be mated together. And one possibility, one suggestion, is that this would actually be at the dealers. So basically, the machine itself, the chassis, would be shipped from wherever it's built, Japan, Kawasaki's factory over there. The power unit and the battery would come from a second location, and that could help actually, because it will basically means that all the batteries are shipped together, which makes it an awful lot easier in terms of the regulations around lithium-ion battery shipping regulations. And then it could be that the final machine is actually put together either at the distributors, or possibly more likely at the dealer. After all, the dealer already will build up your machine from the crate that it arrives in. It doesn't arrive fully built. It has to be put together. So this would make sense in terms of actually assembling these bikes, rather than having to ship out an electric motorcycle fully formed. So keep an eye open for that. I think we're probably going to see that arrive. That will be my guess. I think Kawasaki could be first off the blocks with a genuine electric motorcycle. Don't forget, if you've got comments or questions about anything I talk about on the show, do add them to the comment stream. I'll get back to you at the end of the live show. And just a reminder, you are watching Kevin Williams is here live with my Elevenses show. Do tune in again, and we'll hopefully see you on Sunday when the next show's due. All right, okay. The next picture I have to show you, he says, hopefully, if he's got it all set up right. Yes, there it is. That is one of the bikes which is apparently being trialled by the New Zealand military. It's an UBCO 2x2 battery bike, which presumably means it's powered from both ends. The New Zealand Defence Force is wanting to move towards more sustainable operations, it says, and has taken the initiative to test these electric motorcycles. Now, these bikes were originally designed for sort of agricultural use, and yes, it does in fact have an air-cooled motor in each hub, and the portable battery pack, 48 amp hour, 50 volt lithium ion, as you'd expect, will power the bike, also power tools and other devices, and it will give the bike a range of about 120 kilometers or 75 miles. And this sort of standard power socket will recharge it in 6 to 8 hours. Now, it's not the first military that have switched to using electric bikes. Some of the American Special Forces have been using them for a while. And the reason for this, of course, is that they're extremely quiet. They're also not full of inflammable liquids. They're simple to maintain as well. And what they're saying is that they don't actually need quite the same training requirements as a standard geared motorcycle either, because they're just twist and go. So, yeah, that's for reconnaissance and surveillance use, but also has many other applications. So I know I keep banging on about this, but the implication is that motorcycles of the electric powered nature are here to stay. Right, okay. Don't forget, you can read my works over on my Lulu website. The URL is going across the screen. You can check out my books over there. Survival Skills, which is a kind of DIY guide to better riding. There's Tarmac Tactics, which is a book all about hazards you'll encounter on the road and how to deal with them. And then the final one is Mind Over Motorcycle, which gives you literally a heads up about how we use our brains while we're riding. Okay, so do pop over there and find something to read if you're interested. Meanwhile, we'll be looking at the Isle of Wight TT, and if I've got time, I'll have a talk about blind areas of the road, dead ground, and why we need to be careful about that. But first of all, missing pensioner. This is a news story which I've added since I actually wrote the little release earlier today. Missing pensioner disappeared up a hill in Scotland on his Beta Alp 200 trail bike, and things didn't go according to plan, and he went missing. And he was up there for the night. It wasn't a particularly warm night either, and they went up looking for him again on the Monday evening and couldn't find him. The search was stood down overnight, but they resumed next day. They found him midday the following day because he used his mirror off his motorcycle to attract the attention of a passing police helicopter, which is a fairly clever idea. The helicopter pilot said they wouldn't have seen him if he'd not have done so. He was in a kind of plantation, apparently, where they're putting out new fences. His family knew he was up there somewhere, but as it said, it was a bit of a search for a needle in a haystack trying to locate him. Other people went up to help, but as he was 77, there were a lot of fears that he would be okay. But fortunately, he had no serious injuries and he was brought down by a helicopter later that day. So that's a fairly remarkable story. Remember to take your mirror if you're going off-road. Right, okay, now I'll give you a little bit more detail about the Isle of Wight diamond races. I've given you a link already to the promotional video. And the press releases have been very bullish and upbeat. One statement is it will not be a Mickey Mouse event, and they're saying it will cost between 2 and 5 million to stage, and they aim to provide one of the highest prize pots in the sport eventually. They also claim it's all being led by a world-class best in business team. Where have we heard that sort of phraseology before recently? But it says the Isle of Man TT Clark of the course, Gary Thompson MBE is involved. Other names include former British champion and TT winner Steve Plater, the British Touring Car Championship winners James Kay and Matt Neal, who you may have heard of, an F1 marketing manager, William Parry, and former Honda racing manager Neil Tuxworth. So, yeah, some fairly high-profile names. Now, what they're basing the Isle of Wight races on is, of course, the model of the Isle of Man, which the races there put 30 million into the local economy. They say there that around 60,000 visitors turn up most years, and that pumps in 44 million and supports over 800 jobs. And what they want to do is replicate some of that money income on the Isle of Wight, and they want it to become as important as something like the Isle of Wight Yachting Festival, Cowes Week, and the music festival that they have there. And they hope for 1,500 visitors in the first year, and they want that to grow to rival the TT. They're saying it could reach 50,000 in subsequent years. Now, the race will take place on the southwest side of the island along the military road. If you've ever been over to the Isle of Wight, you'll know that it's a pretty lovely road, beautiful views off the hilltop down across the sea, and it's a very, very quick bit of road as well. They're suggesting that they could actually hit over 200 miles an hour on that part, just like some of the TT circuit. The rest of the course runs inland through some villages, and that one is a bit more narrow and technical. I'll come back to that in a moment. A lap of the circuit is expected to take about 8 minutes, they say, and they hope for races to be between 3 and 5 laps. No sidecars in year one, but they hope that they'll be able to do a demo run and prove it's viable for future years. Now, this isn't going to be sort of a simple case of slapping up a few straw bales and giving a few guys flags to wave. It will be a fairly, there's a major event going on here. So what they're saying is that they'll have to treat 2,500 white lines with anti-slip paint, Hundreds of manhole covers will also have to be treated with a high grip surface, and they're going to have to remove 1,000 cat's eyes. Some telegraph poles will also need to be relocated, and there'll be other safety measures in place to create a semi-permanent race course. They then say that ticketed spectators will be let into the circuit via some race villages. There'll be pop-up campsites. Other parts of the track, spectators will be free to come and go, okay, in accordance with safety measures. So perhaps that does mean that you will get free access to some parts of the circuit. But obviously road closures in place to prevent people moving around on the circuit whilst the racing is happening, and that will inconvenience some of the locals. They'll also need around 250 marshals to work at around 80 points on the track to make sure that all places on the circuit can be reached very quickly, and it will be run under the auspices of the Auto Cycle Union, which is the UK sport governing body. Okay. Who's behind it? Well, the council, the Isle of Wight Council, have put their money where their mouth is, apparently. They are supporting it. And they've also announced that part of the Tour of Britain cycle race will be coming to the island in 2022. So obviously there is a plan to get a lot of tourism into the island to compensate for what's happened this year. Lots of blurb there from people. Sorry, I'm sort of reading this a bit as I go here because of a phone disaster earlier. The final race date is yet to be confirmed, but it will be dependent on the end of the British Superbike Championship in 2021, which normally runs into the end of October. They will anticipate that TV coverage will be happening, but there's negotiations are still underway on that one. Is everybody behind the race though? Well, no, not actually. Rather predictably, there are some dissenting voices, including the Isle of Wight's MP, Bob Seeley, although he clearly doesn't speak for everybody, judging by the comments on his own story on this one. But it is clear that there's a significant proportion of the island's population that's not in favour of motorsports event happening. One argument is that as we transition to a sort of greener planet, this is a bad time to be bringing in a petrol-driven motorsports event. And another one claims that they already have enough of a problem with speeding motorcyclists around the island without actually giving people a ready-built racetrack to go and race around. So friends on the island tell me that there is a consultation going on right now. But it's worth pointing out that we've been here before. We've had projects like this happen in past years, not very far distant. You may remember the Circuit of Wales debacle. Now, this was supposed to be a big Formula One style racetrack built on a sort of a reclaimed industrial site just at the bottom of the Brecon Beacons, right on the edge of the national park. It got lots and lots of backing. It got serious investment from the Welsh Assembly, big cash boost. It was publicly funded with various investors firing money at the project, and it never got beyond the talking stage. There were lots of questions asked about exactly where the money went in the end. It clearly kept several people in a sort of comfortable lifestyle while it was all being debated, but it never got off the ground. It had a MotoGP contract which had to be cancelled. And you may also remember, and this was something I kept a close eye on because I was really interested in going to watch it, as I'm a fan of road racing generally. There was an event called the Welsh Road Race that was proposed in 2017 to happen in August in 2018, so 2 summers ago, basically, this time 2 years ago. That was also set to take place in the Brecon Beacons, and this was going to be run over a mixture of public and MOD roads. there was again lots of popular support for this. The MOD were on side with it. The tickets even went on sale. People were actually buying tickets for this event, but it turned out that they hadn't actually got the approval of the ACU, and they refused to sanction the event. So as late as February 2018, just a few months before it was due to happen, it was all called off and money had to be refunded. And the statement from the Welsh Road Race was that it was revision to the Road Traffic Act in Wales, which was the problem. Although whether that was the case, I don't really know. The event was supposed to go ahead in 2019 after these issues had been dealt with, but it sank without trace. Now, worth noting that the former BSB and TT winner, Steve Plater, was involved in that project too. So he's obviously very enthusiastic to get some racing going on the roads. I'm not saying there was any kind of wrongdoing involved there, nothing like that. But clearly that event went in over its heads. One of the problems, as I understand it, with that Welsh road race was the relatively short lap of 5.25 miles. Now, that may seem quite a long way round if you're a short circuit racer. Compare it with the Brands Indy circuit, which is under a mile. It's quite, it disappears off into the distance and doesn't come back for quite a while. But the problem is the time trial format with which these races operate, where one rider sets off with a gap and then another rider sets off following them. So the riders race against the circuit rather than against each other. And so the fastest riders normally start at the front, the slowest riders generally start at the back, because the big danger on a time trial is overtaking on those roads. And so lapping back markers is serious, obviously a serious issue. Now, at the TT, the lap is 37.75 miles long. So although there's always a bit of swapping position on the road as riders with slightly quicker bikes overtake the guy in front, it's only the very quickest riders ever catch up with the very slowest over the 6-lap race. So overtaking out on the circuit is actually minimized. The problem is that the very short lap of the Brecon circuit meant that by the time the slowest riders at the back of the grid were actually away on their first lap, the fastest riders who left earlier would have been already catching them up and about to pass them. And I don't think they ever resolved that problem. If they were going to start the riders at a decent distance apart, there was no way that they could separate the riders sufficiently to avoid lots of overtaking going on. Now, the Isle of Wight circuit falls somewhere in the middle. It's a 12.4 mile lap, which they expect to take around 8 minutes. And then what they're proposing is a mix of 3 to 5 lap races. So that would mean the races are between 24 and 40 minutes if we talk about the fast 8-minute lap. Now, if you assume that the fastest riders were lapping in 8 minutes and the slowest riders are lapping in somewhere around about 10 minutes, that means over a 3-lap race, you can do the maths, it's not that difficult, there's only 4 minutes available for starting riders. Now, if you start 10 seconds apart, which is how they do it at the TT, that means there's a limit of 24 riders on the circuit before the leaders are catching the back markers up at the end of a 3-lap race. The organisers are saying they can fit in 36 riders per event, but that would only happen if the lap time was slower, maybe if they were racing something like the 250 Moto 3 bikes, or something like the 650 Kawasaki class that they race over in the TT. They would be a little bit on the slower side, so maybe they can squeeze 36 riders in for those races. But whether they can get a 5-lap race in without the riders starting to lap each other, I don't know. The maths doesn't seem to suggest that they could. Other possible issues, well, the press release describes what they call a winding technical section. I would call it a series of back lanes. Some of those roads are very narrow indeed. They're much narrower than TT for the sure, and they're barely wider than the sort of single track roads in some places. They're sort of roads that you may come across on Isle of Man road race, but that is a factor. There's also a lot of buildings next to the circuit edge. Now, I did actually say that I thought the event was pay to view, but having reread the press release, it does appear that some parts you will get free access. But one thing to say is that the getting to the Isle of Wight may not be as expensive as it is to get to the Isle of Man, but it isn't cheap, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on the ferries as well. It's not going to be an event where you can kind of pop over on an early morning ferry Saturday morning, watch the race and go home that evening, unless you've booked a long time in advance. And you can also expect, of course, the ferry companies to put the prices up dramatically to make the most of it that they can. The ferries aren't big, so they won't be carrying many bikes, particularly given there's other traffic that still needs to come back and forth. So my guess is that several, you'll probably have to budget for spending a week over there, which means accommodation, of course. And although they're talking about pop-up campsites, the late October date doesn't exactly favour camping. And that late October date, which is due to the Superbike calendar, British Superbike calendar, which they don't want to clash with, that also brings a couple of other problems. Whilst it avoids the high tourist season, which of course is another reason that the Isle of Wight are quite happy to have this thing positioned towards the end of the year, daylight hours are rapidly shortening. If you've ever been to Brands Hatch for the final Superbike event of the year, which I have on quite a few occasions, you'll know that there is not a lot of daylight left by then. So that means low sun in the morning and evening, which can be a problem if you are riding in or out of it. The weather can't be guaranteed, obviously. By October, we can get some seriously crappy weather. And because of the low sun, if it does rain overnight, tracks won't dry in the morning. And at that time of year, you're also starting to see the first leaf fall too. So there's a risk of leaves on the track. Now, these problems aren't insurmountable, I'm sure, but I think it'd be wise to take a fairly cautious view of the likelihood of this actually happening. I wouldn't get too excited just yet. Even when tickets go on sale, as we saw with the Welsh road race problem, doesn't actually guarantee that the event's going to happen. Once it's got ACU homologation, then it's probably going to happen. But with the public still due to be consulted, I think the done deal tone of these early press releases is a very premature. Watch this space, but don't get your hopes up too much. Right, okay, I'll have to hold over as I thought I might do, I'll have to hold over the blind spot story for another day. Don't forget, I will be back on Wednesday with another live edition of Elevenses. I hope you enjoyed the pre-recorded one on Sunday. Sorry I couldn't make that one live. I'll now be back again the following Sunday. So 11 a.m. Wednesdays and Sundays, you can catch me, Kevin Williams, here live with my Elevenses show. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again hopefully soon. Bye for now.